They're gonna catch my checklist. That's a bad bet.
Welcome back to Never Fade, the NFT podcast. I'm your host, Faxx, and as always, I'm joined by the one, the only Trip Summers, my co-host, Goodmonth. Eth, what's good, good?
What is Gucci, fam? Welcome. EP 438 is what it feels like. Woo! These clips go burr, baby.
Let's go. The podcast is doing its thing. We're bringing in builders. We're bringing takes straight from the inside of Web3. We're broadcasting it out for all to hear and see. And frankly, I'm getting very positive feedback. So appreciate everybody that's listening, commenting. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube and also follow us on Twitter at NeverFadeNFT. So good. Today we have an episode that I'm especially interested to bring to the NFT community. And I do think it has potential to be an especially long episode because I got a lot of questions for this team. And that is the team at Pixel Vault. Gfunk and the crew is coming on the show today. And I'm very interested to hear what they have to say. Good. What's your experience with Pixel Vault? You know, are you holding some assets? Were you in this in 2021? Or what's the story from your side?
Oh yeah, man. I'm bag holding a ton of PV assets. I got a ton of them. I honestly can't even keep track. Like I have so many PV assets in all these different wallets. My experience though, you know, it was summer of 21. The Punks comic was minting. Beanie was an influencer in the space, a pamper, a shiller, a good trader. Beanie was a great trader. And I didn't like Beanie's attitude. You know, this was back in the time when the term shitposter, for our listeners out there that may not know what a shitposter is. Shitposter it sounds bad, but it's a cultural term. It's not a negative thing. Shitposter is what somebody does for engagement. They post things they don't really need. They do it as shock and awe, and they do it for views, like free tweets and such. So
I wouldn't know anything about that. I wouldn't know anything about that, good.
yeah, that's right. That's right. I think that you know, if you follow Faxx on Twitter, he's got a little bit of shit posting in him every given day. He likes to throw some rights when you go left. He likes to finesse the rabbit hole with you.
Yeah, mostly quality takes, just like a little bit of engagement farming, just a touch, just a sprinkle.
That's right. And I think it is something to bring up because Pixel Vault did get their rise to fame via Beanie. And Beanie was a very emotionally charged Twitter persona. And Beanie had a lot of followers, and Beanie got a lot of people into Punk's comics. Now, one thing to know about Punk's comics is that Beanie had the CryptoPunk, which was the main character of Punk's comics. So, in the summer of 21, peak euphoria within the NFT space when there was a lot of financial speculation, Beanie was running around talking about all the promising upside of Pixel Vault and these Punks comics, which happened to represent his CryptoPunk as the main character. And I think it's important to know that because one of the biggest voices in the space had their asset on the cover of Punk's comic, which is the flagship NFT of the company Pixel Vault. Now, before I get into the flash forward here, my own experience was that I saw through that. I saw that Beanie was pumping his bags. I saw that it was all for a comic, which I thought was like, okay. But I didn't really want to spend at the time 0.2 ETH for a comic book that you got to unlock and read. I wasn't into comics. I wasn't really into Marvel, DC comics, things like that. So it didn't really resonate with me. But then they introduced a burn mechanism, and I believe it was the first NFT to actually introduce a burn mechanism where you can burn your comic for a DAO token. And that is where I got interested, because I thought they're using the blockchain to transact and exchange comics and give people choices. And so I was like, hey, in the user-controlled world of Web3, when you get to vote, what you do with your coins, what you own, and how you can participate in community, I was like, hey, this is what I want to play for. So I grabbed some comics on secondary, and I ended up burning them all for the Founder DAO tokens. And the Founder DAO tokens were meaningful to me because I knew that Beanie was spreading the word of Pixelvault and spreading the word of Punk's comics. And they had a vault of CryptoPunks. And so I felt adding a DAO token to something that I thought was going to have a really big treasury one day was going to be valuable. Not to mention, Fuckrender is an artist in the space, and he did the artwork for the Founders DAO token. So it was like, look, there's a burn mechanism. That's net new, novel interaction. It's a Fuckrender piece of work. Cool. That's added bonus. There's going to be a really big treasury behind this. Hey, there's CryptoPunks behind it. Like, that was kind of my no-brainer. Like, let's dabble in some ownership.
And the thing is all of those things were true, right? There continues to be 16 CryptoPunks that were vaulted, including Beanie's Punk, including Gfunk's Punk, that were kind of backing like the original NFT drop. The Founders DAO does represent governance over a very large treasury, the Up DAO, that continues to hold millions of dollars that have not been deployed of Ethereum. So go on.
So it's true. It's all true that this thing was really swirling around the Web3 space and really capturing a lot of attention. So whether you were into the comic piece, or you were into Web3 and ownership, or you were into CryptoPunk, there was a spot for you in Pixelvault. Like, let's not get that twisted. There was a point in time, and it sounds wild right now to say this, but there was a point in time where CryptoPunks was number one. This thing called the Bored Ape Yacht Club was number two. And Pixelvault was on the Bored Ape Yacht Club's heels at number 3 to be number 2. Now, flash forward 2 years.
Hold on. Before we flash forward, let me interject with kind of like my story a little bit here too, because I did follow Beanie, and I was relatively new to NFTs.
Was Beanie your mentor? Faxx. Was Beanie your mentor?
He was one of the accounts that I was the most interested in following, to be honest with you.
Why?
The reason was because he had a really cool PFP of a CryptoPunk, and he traded CryptoPunks, and he would post his moves, at least the ones that he wanted to publicize, and he would make these like ridiculous flips. Like one time when the market was dumping and people were getting scared, like they do in the NFT space, like every other weekend, basically.
He grabbed a zombie, right?
I remember he grabbed a punk that he bought for about 150 Ethereum, and literally within 72 hours, maybe it was a week, he flipped it for 250 Ethereum. So he made 100 Ethereum flipping one CryptoPunk in less than 1 week. I wanted to learn from that, and not to mention he used the handle beanie.eth, and I was like, what is this .eth? So that's how actually I got introduced to ENS, and then I started doing research there. I ended up minting, 3-digit ENS like 824.eth, which I continue to get, double-digit ETH offers routinely on. And, again, I minted that for 0.1 Ethereum. So, he did. I was one of the people that heard about Punk's comic through Beanie. And the thought process was, okay, they're taking 16 CryptoPunks, they're putting them in a vault. They're saying that they're going to, fractionalize that vault. That's interesting. And then they want to use the IP of those CryptoPunks and make a story about it, which is Punk's comic. And so, I minted a few of them at 0.2. A lot of other stuff happened. But bottom line, in 2021, if you minted at 0.2 or got anywhere near that level, the return on your investment was unprecedented. People who started with 0.2 would have, by doing nothing other than holding, would have achieved, 15, 20 Ethereum upside from just like the momentum that project caught. The Punk's comic went well over 10 ETH. It approached 15 ETH floor. The Pixel Vault token ran up to close to 10 ETH. The Meta Hero and mint passes that they later dropped to those token holders sold for astronomical amounts of Ethereum, right? This was all peak bull market hype. And in the process, look, they made a lot of money. Another thing is that one of their co-founders, Sports Cheetah, he's also somebody who put a Punk in the vault there. I did a podcast show with him. I helped produce a Lucky Trader NFT podcast when they started their podcast. So I knew that behind the scenes there were some people that were trustable and look, I had a lot of respect for. And so, I'm kind of in the boat of people who saw the rise, understand that a lot of people did buy assets at 5, 6, 10 Ethereum and probably held them down to very low levels. And so I understand the negative sentiment around that experience. The reality is, like, for myself, I did make money on the collection. I still hold the collection. And I was disappointed, as were a lot of other people, with mainly like the communication in 2022. And 22 was, it was the bear market. It was a hard time in the NFT space. A lot of NFT projects suffered, Pixel Vault included. They did have a war chest though, and they were doing a lot during the year. They just weren't saying a lot in the back half of the year. So what was your experience in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of watched it trend downward. At this point, I was out of Discord. I really don't go into Discord anymore, for the most part. So I just didn't really hear much about it. A lot of the Pixel Vault hopeful went away. A lot of the Pixel Vault community that pioneers what they stood for, what they could be, the hope, they just went away. And I think there's a big takeaway to call out here. And it's for everybody who gets into exploratory fields, specifically exploratory fields of ownership and assets. You have to have conviction on what you're buying and why you're buying it. And you have to understand what experience you're getting out as a return. I never vibed with the comics, so I didn't buy the comics. I saw the comics going up in price. I didn't chase the comics because I didn't vibe with the comics. But I vibed with burning. I vibed with burning assets and mint passes and the new things they were doing. And so I held those for the culture, for the experience to go through them. And a lot of that influenced the way I think about NFTs for brands, the way I think about building in the space. And I don't regret it. I also didn't chase anything. I did make money off this. I think I sold the mint pass at like 70 that I got, airdropped to me. So I made good profit on it, and I'm grateful for that. I'm not mad at them at all. And I think if people are mad at Pixel Vault, like, you really have to ask yourself why. Like, did you chase something and think that you were gonna have a Marvel asset in your wallet and now you don't, you might have got ahead of yourself. And I just want to call that out. You got any takes on that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I mean, like, the reality is, what didn't pump? Cool cats. There was a cool cat that I bought for 14 ETH that I later capitulated. It was the only time I took an NFT loan that I didn't pay off, because by the time the loan was due, the loan's value was higher than the floor price of cool cats. Oniforce. I bought an Oniforce for 15 Ethereum. It was $50,000 at the time. I ended up selling that thing for 1.7 ETH, man.
Shout out Star Lordy. Shout out Star Lordy. Stoked to have you on the show.
Yeah, so speaking about Oniforce, that has the new team behind it, and the CEO, Star Lordy, has agreed to come on the podcast, so I do expect to have that episode in April. Would love to hear the direction of where they're going, so we will be bringing that to you guys very, very soon here. But the point is, a lot of collections saw all-time highs and came crashing down. What I do think was a very consistent thing from the team at Pixelball was the execution of what they did roll out. Their contract expertise, their ability to execute on very hyped mints, these kinds of things were done really well. I do think that at some point their idea of what they wanted to do created this maybe too high of expectation, and they just, I think, made too many NFTs to the point where the ecosystem got confusing. For somebody that wanted to come in new, it was like a little bit overwhelming. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how it shook out. And so a lot of those NFTs, the value of those did come down a lot. However, in 2003, we're seeing a new spirit from the team. We've seen Gfunk become very active in the communications. It looks to me like he has, like the spirit of redemption on his mind, and he's coming back, and he wants the community to know that he's absolutely here building and wants to share his plans and his ideas. And they released recently a video that kind of like rolled out, I want to say, like a roadmap for what's going to happen in Q2 and Q3 here. And it sounds like a game is coming to market, and hopefully we'll learn more about that. So good. You've been watching Gfunk and the Pixel Vault team really come out in 2023 and try to control the narrative about what it is that they're doing and what they're building. What do you think about their approach so far here in 2023?
They seem focused, they seem dialed, and they have to stick to that. They don't have 9 lives. They have a second shot, and they gotta call their shot, and they gotta stick to it. You can't do what the Moonbirds did. You can't say, we're the art collectors PFP, and if you don't want to get on board, then get off. No, you can't do that. You have to tell people what persona you're building for, and you have to welcome them back on the ship, or you need to make them feel comfortable on the ship. You can't say, get on or get off the boat, because you know what that is? That's haphazard leadership. That's not flipping people. And you can't be doodle. You can't say GTFO, because all I read when you say that is, get in or get out. All I read is you don't have a plan and you don't have the leadership. So Pixel Vault has a chance to call their shot and be laser focused, but they need to define the persona for their holders. Now, Gfunk, you're about to come on the show, and I'm going to hold you to task on one item. You sold a lot of assets to people. The secondary did what they did with them. Forget about it. But you did sell assets to people. So it is your job to give them a home. It is your job to define the persona and allow them to opt out or double down. That's the task.
That's right. And we have a lot of questions about the pieces of the ecosystem that I think there's still some confusion about. So hopefully we're going to get to answer some of those questions in this episode. And I believe if we do get those questions answered, it will be a great service for holders of Pixel Vault NFTs and also people who are interested in learning more about the ecosystem. So let's go ahead and bring in the team now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. We got a lot of questions for you, so we're just going to dive right into it here. You know, going all the way back to 21, Punk's comic minted for 0.02 ETH, and it caught that big wave in 2021. You know, it was one of the darlings of the bull run, exploded. In reality, it was one of the most successful projects in NFT history, the way I see it. What do you, when you look back on that time period, what are some positive lessons that you take away from as builders in the space?
Yeah. So one thing that I think is really interesting, right? If you had a project that took 6 weeks to mint out, you'd think we'd be dead and gone by now, right? People have been saying we're dead for a long time. I mean, we showed up DOA. So, from the very start, we just believed in what we were doing. And it was a project that was really focused on leveraging the technology to enhance the experience. So myself, growing up in the entertainment space, seeing all these people on Twitter that were just really starting to use CryptoPunks as brand identities and kind of like these, digital identities, avatars that they take with them. And it may be a reflection of who they are as a person. It may not. They may be somebody totally different online than they are in real life. And I thought to myself, like, wow, this is like a really interesting example of character creation. And I thought, like, what if I could make these CryptoPunks into movie stars, And so Punk's comic really aimed to be the first project to leverage storytelling as a method of value accrual for NFTs. I would say, at one time, you can call us a blue chip, you can argue all day. I'm obviously biased, but we were the only big project that was built off something other than a PFP. Right, there still to this day is no PFP for Punk's comic. That's going to change in the back half of this year as we sort of lay the new groundwork for what it means to be a project under PV. But for us, it was about building community around story. Storytelling is, probably the thing that has brought people together most over, centuries, since the dawn of man. People gathering around a fire, telling stories with people they love. So really, that was the identity we tried to cultivate and lean into the blockchain tech to elevate that experience rather than just slapping a JPEG on the blockchain and calling it a day.
Yeah, I'm stoked you're bringing up the blockchain tech because in, what we talked about before you came in on this podcast was my actual personal experience with Punk's comics in 21. And I'm glad you bring up that 6 week mint out period, the 6 weeks to mint out, because that really was a death knell back in the day. Like if you didn't mint out in 6 weeks, holy shit, you're done, So
yeah, if you didn't mint out in 6 minutes, you were done.
Yeah. So DOA, we're talking zombies, you're the undead coming back, right? And I think what was really cool is I kind of, when I came into the space, I'd always watched CryptoPunks. I wasn't really into the community. It wasn't about kind of buying into CryptoPunks for me. I wasn't really vibing with the community at the time. Apes was my thing, and the comics weren't really speaking to me. But when burn mechanism came out, y'all were the first to do the burn mechanism in the NFT project. That just got me so hyped at the way you were using the technology to burn the comic. I just was like, this is what we're here for, you know? And so my persona, when I fit into the project, was you guys were really messing with the technology in a way that nobody was. And I think that's so important to call out. Like, we forget about 24 months, 20 months later, people can forget who the first was to burn, who the first was to do a mint pass. Like, that all you want, but that's provenance, and I want to call that out.
Yeah, so I think that's really the lasting legacy of Pixel Vault. And there was a thread the other night saying, remember Punk's comic? I think it might have even been yesterday. And I was like, yeah, we're still here, you know?
Or 6529
I really think,
putting out his thread
yeah.
of notable moments in NFTs, and we're like 5 or like 8 of them.
Yeah, like 10 of them, yeah. All of the different sort of like project life cycles. I mean, Pixel Vault, Punk's comic, Inhabitants, we were at the forefront of a lot of different things that have become universal across the space. So that sort of game theoretical mechanic, right? Leaning into this concept of active collecting, storytelling, right? Punk's comic really being the first to highlight that as a way to drive value to a project and a community. The Mint Pass, as you mentioned, we've really tried to push every boundary possible. And with that, sometimes you're going to fail. Sometimes you're going to hit a home run. And, right now you're seeing really it's become like an attention economy. Who can gather the most attention, who's like the loudest voice on Twitter. And you've seen a couple people be really successful at that in the current landscape. But in the long run, I'm hoping that, the tech, what we're bringing from a value perspective will win out in some way, shape, or form. We might not be the loudest right now. We had Beanie once upon a time, and he did that better than anyone. Love him or hate him, he couldn't be ignored. But we're still here doing really innovative things, and 2023 will not be any different. Reboot is really going to shake up the ecosystem and hopefully help everyone, not just PV.
Yeah. And, when you catch lightning in a bottle as you did during the hype cycle, 21 was just dopamine firing on all cylinders. So when you catch lightning in a bottle during that hype cycle, now that we're in 2023, and we'll get into 2022, we're not throwing that year away. We'll get into that bearish down cycle. But
oh, yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah. So when you're, now that we're in 2023, what advice would you give yourself in 21 with what you know right now?
As I mentioned, we never played it safe. We always went for a home run. It's like strikeout or home run. We were very much full Billy Bean. But I would say try not to get too far ahead of yourself. It was easy for really everyone to get swept up in the bull market, and I think we tried to grow a little too fast, too quickly, and unfortunately, some of that scaling led right into kind of the precipitous drop-off in 2022. Fortunately, as has been the case across the last 2 years, I think PV's a full cycle ahead of most of where these projects are, like the pain that these communities are going through. Separating from Beanie, the quote-unquote oversupply, all these things forced us through a cycle much more quickly than others have gone through it. So we've really been speed running the NFT metas. And so, fail quickly, move on, listen to your community, continue communicating. I think that's probably my biggest 22 misstep is with all of the success came incredible access and incredible contacts as we scaled our team. And we built out like a tremendously polished, successful sort of like Web 2 social media history type like marketing team. But when you think about what is successful in Web 3 marketing versus Web 2 marketing, they're very different. I'll use the lore of inhabitants as an example. We've got like 100 pages of story written with like a 30-page lore Bible that sets out like what it means to be on each planet, like what each ecosystem is like, this like really deep, rich background. And from sort of like the Web 2 creative mindset, it's like, no, the lore Bible isn't to be shared. That's what the story is built on. So if you share the lore Bible, you're ruining the story. You're undercutting the art. And I think that very much has credence if you're like, one of the top filmmakers in the world. But, let's be honest, Pixel Vault, we're not Tim Miller at Blur, who we got to be friends with last year. We're not the greatest IP developers in the world, but I think we could be the greatest at leveraging that technology to enhance the experience for people that want to participate with the IP. So not losing sight of what made you, not trying to get too far out ahead of your skis, and believe in yourself. I've always been somebody that, had that like mama mentality, chip on my shoulder, like doubt me and you'll regret it. But I'm an entrepreneur. And so when you have people that, are widely considered top 10 in their very specific area of expertise giving you advice, like who the fuck am I not to listen to them? And, unfortunately, as time has played out, I think I was right. And so, it's this delicate balance of hiring people that you think are the best at what they do and trusting them and listening to them and creating this good work environment for your teammates, but also, knowing when to put your foot down and just be like, look, no, like we've got to pivot. This isn't working. And so it took us a bit too long, but I think we're back to doing what we do best, and you're starting to see the results.
Yeah, so we talked about 22's bear market. I mean, look, the reality is it was harsh on most NFT projects, of course, including those in the PV ecosystem. But you mentioned communication. And, when we started this journey with Pixel Vault and Punk's Comic, and at the time Meta Hero, there was kind of this constant stream of like these weekly sessions, and everybody felt like the building that was happening in public, they were part of it. In 22, the communications really slowed down, and it got kind of to this like building in silence to some degree. And you guys recently released a video that said, like building in silence is basically done. Like 23 is a new story. So how do you look at the communication in 23? Like what's changing? Like how are you approaching that? I see you out there on the timeline, on Twitter Spaces, coming on our podcast, various examples here, but like what's changing from the communication standpoint, like, and why, and what else can we expect here?
So having seen and been through kind of both sides of this, in 22, Gfunk mentioned, kind of these very seasoned Web 2 marketers. We took a very corporate approach, and it was very polished, very very professional, and had the bull run continued, we may be in a very different position. Maybe that would have worked had everything just gone up to infinity, and working with these really really high caliber partners, and all these things, Dana White in the UFC, MLB, these kind of deals where like you need almost that air of professionalism. That's not the reality of the market that we're living in. And so like going back to, as Gfunk said, kind of the roots, is where we came from. Like we were out and on the timeline all day, every day, in spaces, actively like kind of telling the story of who we are, why we're doing this, why we're out here. And the truth is that's who we were the whole time. It's just that we were, kind of following the advice of people that we like, again, like Gfunk said, like, who are we to say otherwise, right? that did not resonate. It didn't end up panning out, but making this pivot kind of back in the other direction is like, we're back to doing what we've been doing. So, being out and kind of being more active on Twitter and in spaces and coming on the shows and the podcasts and things like that. That's kind of just back to the roots of what we've been doing since the beginning. And in my mind, that's kind of one of the things that differentiates Web3 from Web2 is the communication style with the community. I practically live in our Discord, and it's staying in tune with what's going on within the community, what the collectors and holders are asking for, looking for, want. Being engaged in these discussions with, like, especially our core committee now. These are some of our most our most fervent collectors, as well as some of our most outspoken critics. And so having kind of this engagement with them on a deeper level has really proven fruitful in helping us to not guess what the community is looking for and then trying to deliver that, but really being able to iterate much earlier in the development cycle, so that when we do shoot that shot and deliver, it's a banger every time.
I think you guys are bringing up a really interesting point that not a lot of people in the Web3 space get some insight into. And it comes down to building teams, and it comes down to communicating vision. We're on EP 19 in this podcast, but in the second episode, we did a game called GMI and GMI, and we put up a bunch of collections out there. We call our shots, NGMI, GMI. Faxx is famous for, putting Azuki in the NGMI zone, but we won't go there. One of the things when we brought up
you got to bring that up. I take an L in public, and you got to. It's 19 episodes later, dude. You got to hear. All right. I already took that out.
I know you took it out of the jaw. So when we brought up Pixel Vault, it was at the time you rebranded to Inhabitants, and I was so bullish on the rebrand. And the reason why is because why not rebrand? Like, you got hit lightning in a bottle with God mode timing and an incredible community rallying that lifted it up in a phenomenon. Like, throw that to the side. But everybody else who dropped in on 21 created something by the seat of their pants, and then are expected to hold on to it in 24 months later, which ages like a decade in the NFT space. And y'all rebranded. And I remember when that happened, I was so bullish, and I am so bullish on rebrands, because you're navigating, you said speed running the metas. We talk about navigating the metas all the time. Speed running is a better way to put it. When you're speed running these metas, you take DNA from the fabric of these metas and you throw a lot of it out, but you keep some of it in. And so I'm very bullish on the rebrand. I think you did that earlier than everybody. I want to put that out there. Once again, I think you're navigating that in a way that many people don't know they need to navigate that. So congratulations and kudos there. But the thing about this rebrand, and the thing about what you're saying about a polished team and building that out and then kind of getting back to the Web3 roots, I don't think a lot of people understand what it means to have so much access so early and have people kind of get claws in you at an early age and an early point of your business. And when you're building a company, trying to get people on board to have a vision, when your vision is zooming 100x and likely is a genesis of 1 to 2 people, it's hard to get everyone on board and get them spitting the same tone, especially when you have all these other additives and ingredients coming in. It's just a cocktail. It's wild. And so I guess what I really want to break down for people in the Web3 space is, like, let's dig into that notion a little bit. Like, let's dig into that building a team that's polished that could have won, and now you've rebranded, and essentially I think that means, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but that means that you've rebuilt the team for a new communication tool in new environments and speed running that meta. So the question is for Gfunk, if we can kind of think about the team that's built to win. We've talked about the polished team and the timing and how that didn't work out. We're now talking about turning a new leaf and having a vision for Web3. Like, if we're calling the shot right now for the team that's gonna win, you know, what are the guideposts? What are the pillars of this new communication tool with everything you've gathered throughout these years and these times that you're just 100% foolproof, guaranteed, entrepreneur, shot taken, shooter shoot is gonna win?
So I'll start with you called back to Azuki, so I'm gonna reference Zagabond's like now famous Medium or whatever it was, where he's talking about these other projects that he's been involved with, and as you're building in this space, you have to figure out what works, what doesn't, and he finally got it right with Azuki. Well, we've gone through the same experience, but like we never left behind the mistakes. We've carried them with us in PV because, at our foundation, right, no person left behind. When this all started, I've talked about this sort of insane run-up I had, starting with about 20K in crypto, flipping it into like 500, launching the company, and just this meteoric rise. Well, for me, it's extremely important to like try and reward and give back to all those people that like believed in the concept, believed in the team in the first place. You have this sort of like weird balancing act where, people wanted these assets to kind of like act in this security like fashion, like, hey, just like forever number go up and passive yield. And obviously that doesn't work, securities laws
and that happens and
require us.
Sorry, like
Yeah.
that also happens in the startup world. Everybody gets their startup options when they join a startup. They think they're going to get rich in a year, in 2 years. Like that is something that is age old as time. And in Web3, it's like in your face because there's a secondary. That's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, somebody pointed out the other day that they regretted buying Punk's number 1 for 16 ETH. And I like posted in our Slack. I was like, really? Like, did that happen? Because like, honestly, I forgot Punk's 1 even got that high. Like, it's just crazy to think back some of the heights that we saw during that bull run. But, over the course of time, do I think that Punk's easily could get back there? Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do believe it's a 2021 market cycle grail. I mean, we launched alongside Yuga and Be Friends. It was like this 1 month where all of us launched, and certainly Yuga has put its stamp on things. I think PV, comeback story 2023. But really for us, it was about, again, not losing that sight of that culture, and 2022 being as hard as it was, and doing what we felt was, the right things, building things of value, of long-term substance, and seeing other projects in the space that, maybe weren't backed by a lot other than hype and really good marketing, but otherwise there's not much there. And across the team, sometimes there would be this sense of frustration, like, fuck, like, what do we have to do to sort of like recapture that audience, like get back on the main stage? And obviously we were being too quiet at the time, and we've started to pull ourselves out of that now. But it was just about, managing the team. We felt confident we had the right people in place. The ideas that have been lasting in the space that we brought forth really is proof that, we've had the right team all along. It's just believing in ourselves and trying to see through like the really dark times, because of how much attention we had in 2021. There were a lot of people that were probably involved with the project for the wrong reasons, just pure financial speculation. And like, we're all here in part due to the financial speculation, but something I've been talking about recently is that's got to be kind of like the secondary thing, the icing on the cake. You know, I'm a diehard sports fan. It starts with the sports fandom, and then like when I'm in Vegas, that bet on the game just makes it better. It enhances that experience. I'm not just like going in like VGF and I could stand on a corner and be like, what color is the next car going to be? And we could just as easily bet on that. But like, where's the fun in that? Like, I'm doing it because I'm passionate about sports, and it's a way for me to sort of get that entertainment experience in addition to, this financial speculation piece. So that's what we're really focusing on now. And I think the community that stuck with us is here for the right reasons. And certainly we all want to get back to those financial heights that we once saw, but focusing on what it is that we're building, being here for the right reasons, doing it alongside the community, building things of lasting value that we think are sustainable businesses, and just letting the chips fall where they may, putting our best foot forward every day.
Do you have those 3 pillars that you're just like, we use these 3 pillars as guideposts and we win flat out, straight up?
I mean, at the end of the day, PV started out as this sort of like Web3 entertainment studio, right? Like Marvel of the Metaverse. But really, that's not what we are. We're a tech company. We may not build IP as well as Yuga, but I'd put us and our team against any team in the space in terms of like leveraging IP with a blockchain sort of component at its core. So what we're doing this year is really focusing on the tech. Reboot is really going to be everything for the company, and I think the space moving forward. It aligns incentives across the company and the community, and I think that's where really most of these successful projects got lost in 22. There's just divergent interests. Take VC money, or even as you've made a lot of money and you're trying to scale, it's easy for the interests of the token holders and the company itself to sort of lose sight of one another. And so by focusing on this one token model where the community actually gets to take part in the underlying systems that make it all work, we're all winning together. And so that's really the guiding principle for this year, is like, with everything we do, making sure that the community is like playing a central role in that. And I mean, that's what it's supposed to be a Web3 business. And a lot of people talk about it, but nobody's really doing it. It's a lot of sort of like Web2 businesses with like a plus,
Yeah.
Trying to lean in as fully as we can into decentralizing and building with the community this year.
Well, and Sean, there was one part that you glossed over there. Speaking to the team component, I think it largely goes unseen that so much of our team internally came from the community. Like, to me, that's one of those things that really speaks to the magic of Punk's comic #1, is the amount of talent that was in that initial collector base, that 35 of our current employees came from.
Yeah, like 35 out of 45-ish.
Came from that initial community. Started off as collectors and community members before being brought onto the team. Which, like, when you look at the amount of talent on the team, is like insane to even try and comprehend. Like, that this single project could be this point of coalescence, this gathering ground of this talent to then want to be a part of, to want to contribute to. Like, this is a team that really cares, that really, frankly, pardon my French, gives a shit, because they were collectors first. Like, we were part of this community, saw the vision before wanting to join the team. And so, like, when people are like, oh, the where does the community, like, is the community a priority and all this? It's like, we're community members ourselves. We were community members before we were team members. So I think that really speaks to not only Sean's vision as a CEO in bringing so much of the community into the fold, but just like it really is a core team of people that really care and see the bigger picture for what this can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably what I'm most proud of, honestly, having 35 team members out of a team of just over 40 that were sourced like mostly out of our Discord, and the talent on our team is just insane. It's not like we're settling for, C level students. These are all like the best at what they do. It's amazing how much talent we sourced from that initial community. And, I think some of that is, rationalized by like, okay, we're all early tech adopters. Punk's comic was really sort of like ahead of its time. And so it was this interesting gathering ground for just like next level thinkers. And, my job was to pitch them on the vision and then let them do their thing and, try and help navigate the rough waters. And, we made it. We took some hits, but we're still going.
Yeah, there's something to be said about sourcing your team internally from your community, because it has this base level, this atomic level fabric that creates your culture. And, that means at some point they were bit by the vision without having to be taught the vision. And that's a big deal. So I think that alone is unfadable. And I think that's amazing that you guys have sourced the team out of that. You mentioned content. And I think something that's really fascinating, interesting, you mentioned IP, sorry, more specifically, is that I think that it's a little bit lost on the Web3 community how powerful IP is. And I hate to like quote Web2 execs, but Bob Iger is like a beast with IP. He's a madman with IP. And I don't know if a lot of people know like Bob Iger's story, but he was an interim CEO at the time when he suggested a buying Pixar, like Pixar that wasn't for sale, that Steve Jobs got kicked out of Apple to then go build Pixar that owned 51%, and this whack job Steve Jobs was never going to sell. And Bob Iger made the deal, and it completely turned Disney into a dog shit company, pumping out dog shit for 10 years, into a absolute iconic beast into the millennium. And not a lot of people know that story. And one of the things about Bob Iger that is unfadable is he actually kind of is on record saying IP and content outlives teams. It outlives people. It outlives execution. Bet on that. And if there's one thing that I'm taking away in this interview right now that I think people in Web3 need to study up on and take away from is IP and content, and understand that it has longevity that can outlive everybody on this call. That's pretty bullish.
For sure. I mean, look at Mickey. I mean, he's about to go CCO. We'll all be able to be making Mickey memes soon. But yeah, I mean, that was really the nexus for the company itself, right? It was leveraging IP in a way that the NFT Web3 space had never seen. And I do think to date, some people have done it more effectively than us, but some of the time that was spent in 2022 in sort of like our dark period, we were working with Tim Miller at Blur. I mean, just learning from him, just like having him sort of like mercilessly rip apart things. Like, he's not a guy that parses his words and then just be like, this sucks. And I'm like, okay, well, like, I don't, give it to me straight. Like, okay, how do we make it better? Because I think at the time, everyone was here for the financial aspect and the tech, and a lot of people didn't even read the comic. And the comic's fun, and if you're in the space, I think it was good, but there were definitely ways we could improve. And this ties to the rebranding to inhabitants. Was like, we took all these meetings with Tim. Now our writer is a guy that Tim had really loved, had read one of his books and brought on to work on Love, Death, and Robots. And So it was really like learning how to become a proper IP development company. At some level, all of us are capable of creating IP. It's just, how sticky and what's the longevity going to be. And so, we really wanted to figure out what the story we wanted to tell was. And in the end, MetaHero didn't reflect that story. There were also some business reasons, not wanting to get in the way of, a certain large tech bro. And then also at the time when everything was going crazy financially, we were talking to a lot of like Marvel talent, like actors, actresses, etc. And MHU and MCU, Marvel Character Universe, were close enough that they were worried in their contracts that Marvel was going to come back at them if they did anything with us. And so because it didn't reflect the story, and also there were these business aspects and continuing to want to make things better, we made that pivot. No looking back, continue to try and make things better. Things are permanent on the blockchain, but there's always room to grow and always ways to figure out that next step forward, even if you think you're up against the wall. And in our hype video, you see that there's a supernova incoming, and I think it's really going to shock people at like what a full sort of re-envisioning of Pixel Vault we've done. It's just too complex, right? Like I'll use 10KTF as an example. Everybody, I think, in the space would widely say what they're doing with IP is the best or close to the best. But like the collector's experience is super complicated, and Pixel Vault did that first, right? We led the way into complexity, and now that we're this super complex ecosystem, and I'm running the company but still want to be a participant across communities, I realize how fucking hard it is to follow it. I have all this Yuga stuff, and now they have this like Legends of Mara, I think that's what it's called. And I'm like, well, like, okay, I have a couple codas, but like, what the fuck does that do?
You're
And
Gfunk, you're experiencing the complexity firsthand.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Someone else, like from an outside ecosystem perspective.
Exactly. So, we're pushing the opposite direction now. Everybody else is still getting more complicated. How high can we stack this fucking thing before it topples? We've been there, we've done that. It doesn't work. So we're going back the other direction. If we can't pitch it in an elevator, it won't work. It won't scale. So making it a very, very, very simple process to understand, at least at the base level, for entering these ecosystems, and trying to make a very clear value proposition to collectors, and just focus everything towards like singular purpose. And so that's what 23 will be about for us.
Love to see it. And before we get into kind of like the next phase here with reboot and battle plan and so forth, I do want to clarify some things on my mind, and probably a lot of the other kind of holders and collectors' minds, to kind of better understand. So you mentioned MLB, UFC. In 22, one of the things that came out was Pixel Vault Sports. More recently, with the hype video, it's like the message is laser focused on gaming and storytelling. So where does that leave Pixel Vault Sports?
Yeah, so PV Sports, I still very much believe fundamentally in the fact that sports are, one of the most avid communities to target, and it's like a perfect breeding ground for sort of like Web3 to enter. And I don't think anyone has quite captured it just yet. But right now it's like, again, leaning into this idea of, how high can you stack something? People want us to prove it. What's that core value proposition? Why should we care? And so before we continue anything from like an expansion perspective, continuing to explore all these different opportunities, we really want to show to our core holders, our most loyal holders, that like all the work coming to fruition, what the vision is supposed to be. I just don't think people want to see, a new thing from Pixel Vault right now. They want to see us deliver to the existing communities, and we very much plan on doing so. As for MLB, certainly they were an awesome partner. We continue to hopefully plan things out in the future with them. Right now, with the market being where it is, it's not time to expand. It's time to consolidate, make a very clear statement about who we are. And so we're doing that first before we focus on anything else.
Thanks for sharing that. And, with this idea of kind of consolidating and simplifying, one of the value propositions for somebody that at the very beginning wanted to get into Punk's comic was this idea that 16 CryptoPunks were going to be vaulted, and kind of that value was going to be there as a store of value from the start. And the reality is very, very few other NFT projects have launched with that kind of asset value locked up from the beginning. And frankly, like, I don't think it's talked enough about, and I don't think a lot of people know. Like, as I've been in the space, making new friends and networking on Twitter with different communities, like I remember recently I posted something about like, I have fractional ownership via Punk's token of this CryptoPunk, and it was like Beanie's CryptoPunk, right? And people were like, wait, what? Like, what's that? Like, how? Tell me what's going on. So I think we should just kind of briefly take this opportunity to recap this, right? There's 16 CryptoPunks in a vault. Includes Beanie's Punk, includes your Punk, Gfunk, includes Sports Cheetah's Punk. And that's kind of the basis of the IP. Now, I've been staking Punk's comic since that became available, since the staking window opened, and it was a 2-year staking process, and it's nearing its end, right? But I've been earning these Punk's tokens. So am I a fractional owner of this vault? In fact, if so, like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, so the CryptoPunks are essentially this. Yeah, the Punks pool is a vault of the 16 CryptoPunks that our core characters in Punk's comics are based upon. That fractionalized vault, it was a fractional.art, now Tessera vault. And the underlying Punks tokens are fractional ownership governance over that vault of assets. So if, whether it be a buyout were to occur, or, with the governance of those tokens, there's also a significant pool of liquidity there because of the partnership with Adidas. There was a decent amount of that mint that went towards that pool of assets. The Punks tokens really do represent fractional ownership and governance over that vault of CryptoPunks. So I do agree with you that it is kind of a maybe overlooked value add or foundational value prop that these tokens have real tangible value in being like fractional ownership of this incredible pool of vaulted assets. But Gfunk, back over to you. I know that whether or not you want to get any more alpha.
This is real life lore, by the way. This is just real life lore of Pixel Vault. We're going through it.
Right. I mean, this was the big idea that launched the company. And it's funny because now it's like, as you said, Faxx, I mean, it's just like totally overlooked. Like I said, starting out with 20K, flipping my way up, I always wanted a CryptoPunk. Like that and ringers, which, now I'm fortunate enough to have collected both. At the time, I was like, damn, who the fuck could pay 8 ETH for an NFT? That was like the floor on CryptoPunks at the time. I was like, who can pay 8 ETH for an NFT? So I thought, okay, this is really interesting. what if, and we were talking to Andy over at Fractional, now to Sarah, we were a launch partner there. Like, what if when you bought this comic, this story that's going to make these CryptoPunks famous, you got to own a little piece of each of those punks? Because there's only 10,000 punks, and, you know, if we're building this for the long term, a lot of people are going to want CryptoPunks that are never going to have a chance. You know, they're all going to be vaulted. I know mine, never leaving my vault. So the really, like, big idea, the core idea was, you know, make these CryptoPunks, these famous punks, accessible to the average person. You know, maybe you only have $100 to participate in the ecosystem, but you can have a piece of what is, in my opinion, the most important collection in NFTs. And then amongst that collection, some of the most notable and recognizable CryptoPunks. I mean, Courtney from the comic is now in a global marketing deal with Adidas. I mean, on like Adidas merchandise. And of course, you know, Beanie, you know, famous, infamous, however you want to frame it. I mean,
notorious.
Yeah, exactly. The community owns those. So I think it's a really awesome and overlooked piece.
Provenance of your Beanie history is in your vault. Like, that's the blockchain for you, folks.
And if you own the Punks tokens, you can rock that PFP, because technically you own a little bit of it.
When Twitter takeover of all of the Punks
Twitter takeover
holders.
Beanie PFPs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with the lore. You know, like, for me personally, experiencing what's happening in the NFT space is the lore that I'm most excited about. You know, like, when that Beanie Punk was vaulted, like, people didn't know what was going to happen to the Beanie story. You know, like, for better or worse, and the implications that it had on Pixel Vault. At the end of the day, that punk is notorious, and that punk is in a vault that's fractionally owned by the community, and that's a fucking dope story. So I wanted to kind of just hit on that and make sure we're, you know, on the same page about that. So the other question is, in regards to tokens, is the POW token. So we're under the impression that the POW token was going to be used as a utility token in a DeFi game of some kind. Now we're looking at this roadmap or this video. It looks like in Q2 and Q3, there's some kind of battle plan in action. Will the POW token be part of that, or will a new token be introduced? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think for those that have been paying very close attention, at this point it's clear that it's going to be a new token. However, the entire focus of everything that we're doing is to drive that core value back to the group that's been with us from the start. And so the POW token very much is a part of that that mix for what this token will be. But just realizing, as I mentioned earlier, the complexity of our ecosystem, we need to simplify. And so you're going to see a very, very complex ecosystem go down to something very simple in a flash. And, you know, it's my hope and expectation that a lot of the value that has been lost due to that complexity is recaptured in this moment, and is really sort of like a catalyzing moment for PV in 23.
I think if people know their physics a little bit and they understand what a supernova is, I think there's a lot of alpha in that. And I think the thing about a supernova that's fascinating is there's two triggers to it, right? It's subjectivity. It's either a white dwarf ignites or something implodes and it collapses. And I think you know, you've leaked enough about your oversupply to hit to a positive attrition collapse. I've also think you've brought a new Mamba mentality energy of a white dwarf. I think people need to study up on their physics a little bit here.
I think they should. We're leaning full into this universe that we're building. So it's going to be very exciting. As VGF was mentioning earlier, we've really been working hand in hand with our core committee which is the group of core holders. They had the opportunity to apply to this committee that's under NDA. They receive some compensation for that, but they get basically behind closed doors, and the team comes up with an idea. We put it in front of them. What do you think? We love this, but we hate this. I don't think the community is going to get that. Fix this. And they'll give us like brutally honest feedback. And I mean, it's been working fucking amazingly. We launched it at the beginning of the year. Everything so far has gone awesome, and they're very much involved in sort of this reshaping and the supernova. So, you know, not having to have people at this point be like, oh, you know, trust us, because for whatever reason, even though VGF says, look, like, we're of the community, still, you know, if you're a PV employee, you know, you might be biased. The cores are like, no, like, trust us. They're listening to the feedback you're giving, and they're taking this all into account. So, super excited for this next phase.
So one more important token here that I think deserves some airtime is the Founders DAO token. You know, this was one of the most prized NFTs of 2021. People who were holding the Punks comic had to decide whether to continue to hold the Punks comic or burn it for the Founders DAO token. And just this idea of like Founders DAO, a DAO being part of like the foundational structure of what Pixel Vault was building, was a very attractive concept. And then you couple that with art from Fuck Render, and it really came together well, and it became very valuable. And my understanding is that the Founders DAO holders, they're still in control of a very large treasury. But can you speak to a little bit about how does that token fit into this ecosystem now? What are their kind of roles and responsibilities here? How does it tie into 2023?
Yeah, so we spent a lot of 22 setting forth like the formal foundations for the Founders DAO. There's a lot of DAOs in the ecosystem, but none of them are set up properly. So Jacob, our attorney at the time, is just sort of like obsessed with DAOs and trying to like really bring to fruition a lot of the promises that we saw maybe in 21. And so it has its full formal structure. They're enabled like any other business to undertake really whatever it is that they decide to do. And so we thought it was important to give them their own distinct voice so that they could do things outside Pixel Vault if they choose, not wanting to just restrict them to being like a fan club. So that was like the first big part of what we were trying to do in 22. The second point is, yeah, I mean, they own a ton of assets. They're, I think, the second largest holder of planets, which are obviously going to come in play in a huge way with this supernova coming up in a few months. The Lost Robbie, that was the storyline of the first comic. You just saw recently there was a sale. I mean, alongside CryptoPunks and a handful of other NFTs, like gotta be one of the most storied NFTs in the history of Web3. Just recently sold for like 300 ETH, I think. So there's this really amazing collection of one-of-one art tokens that are focused on our ecosystem and others. There's Bored Apes, My Ape, Beanie's Ape, Ben Mayer White, who at the time was on the Adidas team, and that was sort of like the original idea for what ended up becoming Indigo Hers was his Sir Nicholas Rage ape that he donated to the DAO. And so it has really kind of like, in one way, been an incredible accomplishment for PV, but in another way, sort of like one of the most disappointing things for me is just like this idea of collective ownership. Another one of like the big ideas that Pixel Vault was founded on. Again, tying into those fractional tokens, like it never caught on the way that I thought it would. People want something in their wallet personally, rather than something amazing held by you and your, 5,000 closest friends.
Yes.
And so I think it's like a tremendously undervalued asset. It's undeniably one of the best communities in Web3. I mean, the chat is constantly popping off. During the bull market, there was so much alpha in there, so much money made across the ecosystem, everyone helping each other, teaching each other, just a lot of big brains in this community. So that's the great success, is the community we've built. But like the token value it depresses me seeing it. But it's hard to drive value to these assets in a way that is compliant from a regulatory standpoint. And so that's really what we're focusing on with Reboot. And I think ultimately what you'll see the Founders DAO grow into is a developer on the protocol alongside PV, building experiences, games, etc., and becoming a company that is basically our partner, fully enabled, that we want to work with hand in hand, but not hold back in any way such that you got to be building inhabitants or punks. Like, no, like go make your own PFP, like do whatever, experiment. You've been given all these assets, like explore. So that's the hope, that's the goal. So yeah, some wins, some losses, but that's sort of the PV story.
That's interesting about the Founders DAO token, because we've seen a lot of NFTs go up a lot and come back down. But most of those NFTs do not represent governance over the kind of assets that the Pixel Vault Founders DAO does. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you were to look at, okay, the treasury, all those Grail NFTs, all of that stuff, and you just simply calculated that, and you said, hey, all of the community and all of everything else, the alpha, the experience, all of this, you put that off to the side, you still have this tremendous asset value sitting there. And like, show me one other NFT at this price point that has that. So
I can show you two others, and they're both part of Pixel Vault. So we've got the planets with 8,000 ETH, and we got the Punks tokens that have 1,800 ETH from the Adidas drop. So the entire Punks comic portion went to the treasury of that token. So, I mean, I'm biased as hell, but find me assets under 1 ETH that have the backing, 2 years of building, and massive treasuries that are in a real way controlled by the community. And, if I was a new entrant, I'd be saying some.
But that's the alpha here, right? Like, we had Jack Butcher on an episode a few episodes ago. We had him on the podcast. And like, one of the terms that he used that like Good and I, now we're like using this term like left and right. We took it from Jack, economic energy, right? What happened is that
Jack's the man, by the way.
Yeah.
I was collecting his shit when like nobody knew who the hell he was. I'm like looking at visualized value, and I'm like, damn, this guy has like banger after banger. Like his ability to like get big ideas into like just like a small little visualization is just like incredible. So shout out to him. I'm glad everybody woke up to Jack.
I mean, people who fade anybody who calls something visualized value. Yeah, like NGMI, right? I mean, he's putting it in his words.
Point, though, was like this economic energy concept, right? Essentially, the energy has kind of left and now is starting to return into the ecosystem. But like the asset value, these vaults, these treasuries, like if, however you can unlock that and make that connection, for people to really understand, like, no, like, this is undervalued. Clearly, this is why it's undervalued.
It's tangible value.
Tangible value. Then, like, the economic energy floodgates will open up. And it's like, how do you unlock that?
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting on rocket fuel, for sure. We're missing that component that Beanie brought, right? Like, that attention. The ecosystem in 2023 is sadly nothing more than who can capture attention most effectively for any given stretch of time. And again, as I said, I think long term it'll be about more than that. But we need to find ways to recapture that attention, because in terms of like fundamentals and like actual tangible value, there's nothing like PV in terms of bang for your buck. So got to figure out how to ignite it.
Yeah, and so Gfunk, you mentioned the statement of being a little bit depressed when you look at that token value of the Punks token. And I think that there's two personas in the market right now. There's the persona that's still about ROI on everything, secondary, financial return, ROI. And then there's the other persona that's just merely long bagged. Like I think you look at Faxx, you look at myself, we're long bag holders, we're long bag builders, we understand these things take time. And when you think of that Punks token and the current value, right, it makes a lot of sense. Like, even though you're sitting on reserves, even though you're sitting on these deep bags, it makes a lot of sense that a company that launched 2 years ago has like launched a token and a token is low. There's a reason why companies have, illiquid equity, and they have to go through an IPO process to get priced, to go to a market, to be of a certain value. It takes time. It takes process. And I think Reboot is very fucking phenomenal, because anybody who tries to build a P2E game understands that like play to earn is kind of bullshit if you don't have a prize pool. Also, play to earn without a prize pool is risky if the game's not fun. And those are two mega hard tasks. You need a prize pool and you need to make the game fun. And in my opinion, if I'm reading the tea leaves, understanding what it takes to build companies, understanding how hard it is to take something from 0 to 1, understanding that time is a factor, I'm looking at PV and I'm seeing two things happen. I'm seeing a prize pool and reserves that are real. And then I'm seeing methodology going into a system that a lot of people can read and eyes can bleed and say, okay, what do I do with this 43-page white paper? But I'm seeing mentality go into a system that has a efficient gaming mechanic that could drive the entire space forward, not just Pixel Vault, entire Web3 gaming forward, and likely only competition, if not partner, is the other side, and IP to go on top of that. And the only missing piece for me, and what's yet to be seen, and it will take time, is the game fun. I'm gonna go like on record and say you have matchbooks that are just sitting there waiting for the flame to hit them. That the one question, and I think when it happens, everyone will turn on, is when that game is fun. Not is the game fun. When Pixel Vault makes the game fun. If they take 7 years to make the game fun, game over. GG.
Yeah, let's hope not 7 years,
GG.
but yes, definitely GG. I'm sure VGF has some thoughts on this, video game freak as it is.
Yeah, so first of all, I think that might be the most broadly succinct summary from like an outsider perspective that I've heard of Reboot yet. So kudos to you there. The other part with Reboot is a lot of these P2E ecosystems are really just farms, right? It's grinding. It's trying to show up and earn your little bit of yield every day. What Reboot fundamentally provides differently than a lot of these ecosystems is this on-chain transfer of value, where players show up and play a game of skill. They're putting up an ante, something at stake, where me being the competitive gamer, I want to show up and say, hey, I'm willing to bet on my skill that I can beat so-and-so or the other guy. If it's a 50-50 shot, that's relatively reasonable, odds there. But if I'm David taking on Goliath, I want to be able to be appropriately, disproportionately rewarded for taking on that risk. And having that transfer of value, and not only the mechanics but the rewards uh, be a part of this on-chain transfer of value, whether it's, the players, the rewards providers, the developers of the game being able to earn based on their contribution of what is the most fun game in the arcade to play. It just makes sense, right? And up until this point, up until Reboot, it's largely been, controlled by these game marketplaces, whether it's Xbox, iOS, Steam. There's quite a few of them now, but they're king making these games. They're showing, this is the hot game to play, taking 20 to 30% off the top. And with Reboot, we're able to take that, that value, that equity in the ecosystem, and reward it back to developers, players, and these participants in the ecosystem, i.e., developers, rewards providers, and those that are most involved in the ecosystem itself. And to me, that's like a clear differentiator of Reboot from most of what else exists out there today.
Yeah, Reboot.
Yeah, we're saying fuck play to earn. It's play to win, right? I didn't grow up in the generation of participation trophies, so we think people want to show up, play a game, and based on their skill, be rewarded. Dating back to my earliest days, like I was an arcade junkie. Show up, you get all your tokens. This arcade economy, the best games get the tokens. You, based on your skill, get tickets as rewards based on your performance. Then those tickets, you go to the cage and you get cool prizes, right? So Reboot is exactly that. You put your tokens in, your skill yields you tokens back out. In this case, it's NFTs, but they're all backed by the collateral that is this underlying currency for the ecosystem. And so there's basically instant liquidity on the items. So you, as a player, get the choice of keeping these items in game, leveraging them to be a better player, continue playing, burning them to collect the underlying token, take it out, turn it into ETH, turn it into USDC, whatever you may want to do. And at the end of the day, that's how you create a sustainable ecosystem, is not this mega inflationary show up, punch the clock, put in work kind of game. It's like, it's got to be fun. You're going to want to show up, play against your friends. If you beat them, you take their tokens. I think that's the name of the game.
Well, in Goodmonth, to your earlier point, like, none of this works unless the games are fun. Like, in my mind, there will be gamers that go to Reboot just for the fun of it. That they show up, they're willing to have that exchange of, I will pay to have this experience and to have this much fun, and I'll earn some rewards and prizes in the process. There will also be those gamers that are so confident in their abilities and their skill that they show up and try and earn a disproportionate amount of rewards based on their gameplay. I don't think it's either or. I think it's an and. And that's where I think a lot of these gaming ecosystems have it wrong, is they have it where it's this constant grind where, like, everyone is trying to earn and there's no other incentive to playing the game other than earning. And in my mind, it's like, no, it accommodates all. It's you can have those players that are willing to show up and pay to play the game, and that's fine. But they will also then have the benefit of sovereign agency and ownership of these in-game assets. The other side of that being that, given these on-chain mechanics and this ecosystem of Reboot, that those people trying to earn can be incentivized and rewarded for taking on that additional risk.
Yeah, this is interesting. We had Lior Messica from Eden Block, the creator of Mutant Cartel of Mutant Hounds, and when we brought up this play to earn discussion, like he scoffed at play to earn and pretty much said like that's ridiculous, that was never going to work, and pointed to Axie Infinity and economies in the Philippines that were using SLP token to buy food, and how that all came crashing down, and the reasons behind it. Really had a similar sentiment in the fact of like people play games and are they do so because they enjoy it and typically are willing to spend to play. And if there is going to be winning, it should be to some degree based on skill, not just showing up. So you guys all kind of share the sentiment. So is it like fair to say that like play to earn as we knew it from the Axie Infinity days is dead?
So I have a strong opinion here. Play to earn is just marketing jargon. It really, the people have an issue with the application of the technology, not the technology itself. Play to earn as a concept is very much alive and well. It's just the application, how these developers have implemented it, that is broken. I fundamentally believe that playing to earn something on the other side of a game is healthy. Like, that's what we want here. We want to be able to play a game and earn some equity in the time that we're providing and contributing to these gaming ecosystems. Like, I think that is fundamentally like a core value add that blockchain-backed gaming ecosystems provide to gamers. But most people have attached this negative connotation to it because most of play to earn that we've seen thus far has been fundamentally broken and these pyramid Ponzi structures. So I do think in a lot of people's minds, like play to earn is dead, but it's only because we've seen poor implementation of it thus far.
Yeah, so we're flipping the script. Play to win. I mean, it's a very familiar concept. Best I can liken Reboot to something that a lot of listeners will probably be familiar with is like DraftKings, right? There are only 3% of players that are making any significant amount of money. I was lucky enough as I was pursuing like my entrepreneurial endeavors to be making like 50 to 100K a year playing. It was enough to add to whatever sort of hustles I was doing. But most people are showing up and they're playing knowing they're going to break even or maybe lose a little, but it's fun. It makes your game day experience better. It's about the game itself. And so a similar experience here. Hopefully people are enjoying the experiences that they go in with. There are ways to certainly improve your likelihoods of coming out with more than you left with. And I think that's a lot of the fun sort of like DeFi mechanics, like maximizing your ROI. So there'll be a bunch of different ways you can play the game, right? If you're somebody that's into DeFi, you can play with Reboot from the financial perspective. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about fun games that people want to play against their friends, and if they play well, get something of value out on the other side.
Yeah, I think I'm confident to say the Bears bottomed when multiple people were rebranding play to earn. We've heard it's play to spend. We've heard it's play to win. I'm gonna say it's play to fucking have dopamine, right? Like that's
Exactly.
that's the
Play to
atomic
have fun.
layer here. Play to have fun.
Yeah.
But I just want to say it must be really fucking wild to be in y'all's chair and go from this idea of IP to being on the edge of creating the Web3 play to win network that people come to put tokens into to feel something. I just want to express, we've been on this call for an hour and a half. I'm proud as hell of y'all for what you've done in 24 months as builders. Like, there's no doubt you're in the no fade zone. We can't wait to watch you bring this to market and just win and flip all the haters and take the people who've been in your bag from the jump to Valhalla in a
Exactly.
way of just feeling the winds, right? So fucking bang
Amen.
on.
People say TV world's slowest rug. I say world's fastest game-changing protocol. 14
go.
months.
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Love to hear it. So, it's interesting because we've been putting people in the no fade zone on this podcast, and good, he wanted to learn more. But he's giving you the stamp of approval. You're officially in the no fade zone. Pixel Ball, Gfunk, VGF. Let's fucking go.
The crazy thing is, like, I have my Pixel Bowl bags. I have not flipped those bags. Mid pass, planets, comics. Like, I got the whole bag, and I knew that y'all were going after something different. I think the story of from IP to reboot white paper to your literally the journey of going through the grindstone of 22 and building the wrong, I don't want to say building the wrong team, building the wrong communication strategy, right? Like, that's a story that I think people need to hear as builders. I build products, I build software, I build teams. It is hard. You go through the grind. Like, I built a company and sold a company to a bigger company that was owned by a private equity firm. And I'd show up and I'd pitch a vision on a slide deck, and everyone would be like, hurrah, clapping, great, awesome. 5 minutes later, I get a ping like, hey, have you thought about this? I'm like, motherfucker, that's what the whole hour presentation was about. Like, so I know how hard it is to get people on the bus. And I know how hard it is that right when you think you got people on the bus, it only takes 24 hours for them to fall right back off the bus. And in Web3, you get that every day. You have people who just want to come at you, Gfunk, because your name's Gfunk, because of your PFP. They just want to come at you.
Yep.
And you go right
Lots
back
of
at
haters
it.
on the Bird app, that's for sure.
Dude, a lot of haters on the TL.
No shortage of haters, that's for sure.
And you're going at people, and I just think, kudos are rare. In the builder circles, you got to have people to give kudos, and you got to have people to lean on. So we're here for y'all. If you ever want to bounce ideas off of, if you want to throw things at us, communication-wise, like, we got your back.
Thank you both.
First of all, when I want to say when Goodmonth tells you a story about doing a 1 hour presentation and then MFers being like, hey, have you thought of this? I'm MFers, in that conversation. Second of all, like we hit on this point that like Gfunk, you got targeted a lot, man, on social media. And I think a lot of people would have packed it in and been like, F this, dude. I'm out, and then they would have been like, see, he's a soft runner, all this stuff, but you chose not to do that.
I'm stubborn as hell, man. Yeah, we got a bad rap. I don't know why, but, hating TV became cool for some reason. And if you've got nothing of quality to bring to the table, you just, add on to whatever the popular commentary of the day is. I can't even count how many haters we have that literally have no fucking clue what's going on. So, that's fine. That's their prerogative. Not going to change what we're doing. I always knew my team had my back. People can call me incompetent all they want, but if the 35 people that I'm going to war with every day believe in me, that's good enough. So, just going to keep punching the clock, putting in work, showing up at 3 a.m. for the shoot-arounds like Kobe.
Yes,
and,
sir.
Hopefully get the results.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like the double-edged sword of social media and virality, right? You catch the lightning in a bottle, you catch the hype, your project goes up. Then when it becomes like the viral thing to like shit on you, everybody's going to load up and pile on. And so, you know what? The pendulum swings. We're feeling it swing back the other direction. So kind of like, I guess maybe my last question before we let you guys go here is, what specifically in terms of timelines can you tell us about Battle Plan? I know very recently the lore that you guys have been investing in developing hit. It started to roll out. Package Blue is this first installment, correct? And this is, I'm assuming, leading us into battle plan. So can you give us some specifics, as specific as possible, in terms of what to expect there?
Yeah, so Battle Plan is kind of its own pocket universe. It's like very casual auto chess meets Magic the Gathering meets Super Smash Brothers. So eventually we'll incorporate the Punk's IP, maybe other communities' IP in kind of like this Smash Bros. Environment. Inhabitants is like its own thing. We have 100 pages written. We're really focusing on building out a really, really, really deep backstory and lore, because ultimately, as Good was saying, like IP outlives everything. So trying to feed the community that's hungry for stories with this long form content, while we focus on delivering a game that's fun, that is going to be easy to approach but hard to master. And so starting in May, you're going to see the changing of our ecosystem, the first kernels of gameplay, the launch of Reboot, and over the course of the year, we're going to keep adding different feature sets. The game and Reboot will go hand in hand. The game's going to show off all of the different features that Reboot has, and myself, I'm out on the biz dev grind, trying to get Reboot in front of as many builders as possible. So a lot of notable names in the space, currently thinking through if Reboot fits their future strategy. And certainly we're going to be there to assist them in any way we can, because as we started, I think prior to recording, got to bring WAGMI back. It's not a zero-sum game right now. We want everybody to succeed. Would love to succeed alongside everyone on Reboot. So let's do it.
Yeah, and one of the best Kobe lines out there is when he was asked about getting doubled on pickup, right? Doubled on practice. And they're like, does that piss you off? He's like, no, bring a third, right? I think Gfunk needs, he needs the third, right? It's like, double them all you want.
I love that mindset.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yo, Good. That was an interesting conversation, dude. You put Gfunk and Pixel Vault VGF in the no fade zone, man. What are your thoughts?
I did. I'm a little surprised, to be honest. I didn't. It's not that I didn't think they were not gonna be unfadeable. It's that I needed to hear the right things. I needed to hear that they went through a grueling period and that they make those adjustments. I bet on grit, and Gfunk's got grit, and Gfunk specifically understands what it means to evolve through grueling periods. 22 was a grueling period, and they made changes and modifications to put themselves in position to win. I went from I'm a bag holder, let's see how this plays out, to bullish as fuck.
Yeah, this Supernova event that's coming up, if we read between the lines here, if they're trying to simplify things, and then there's this event, and there's some alpha there. So from the NFT kind of collector perspective,
Yeah. I mean, I was interested in Pixel Vault in 21 because of their use of the blockchain, with burning, with Mint Pass, things like that. And I've always known that supply was an issue, and I've always known that they could easily do a burn mechanism and bring it back in. It's clear that's going to happen. And it's clear that if you want an approachable entry point to a community that has a ton of reserves that it's sitting on, it's a no-brainer to get an entry point. It's worth it. And I think, look, erase the memory. 21 was wild. 22 down bad. 23 started new, but you have these reserves sitting in this community, and you have an engaged community still. I don't know. It's time for something like this to actually take off. It's time for something like this to have a Web3 gaming protocol that is interoperable. What Yuga's doing with the other side is awesome. That's great. It's going to be very social. It's going to be very immersive. It's gaming, but it's more of a social gaming. Pixel Vault has an opportunity to bring more of a competitive gaming, actual game building infrastructure to the space. And I think the access that they have to doing so is going to pay off. They got the money to do it, and they got the mindset to do it. So why fade them?
Yeah, when you think about the treasury that they have, the funds and assets they have under management, and the tech experience and execution that they have proven, and now they're talking about simplifying the ecosystem, and at the same time, creating this protocol for gamers across. There's really good opportunity, I feel like, for this to come together here. And so I'm really happy that we captured this information in this episode. I think for the people who do tune into this and do hear this, hopefully it's going to resonate with them, because I learned a lot. And so
I will say, before we close it out, there's a serious play going on in the space right now of blue chips. People that hold blue chips are trying to reserve their bags, and they're not trying to open up their mind and see other communities that are getting built. I'm constantly being faded by apes because of my supportive D-gods. I'm constantly being faded by apes because I'm interested in collecting copy-paste art on the blockchain. There are apes going at the Pixel Vault community who are actually out there trying to build. I honestly have a statement for people out there that if you hold a monkey picture and you pride yourself on that being an investment, and you're telling people why to not pay attention to other builders, like, you need to check yourself.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's down bad mentality. Things are changing. We need to stay on top of what's happening. That's the point of this podcast. We're bringing in builders who are absolutely, giving us insight into what's going on. So, look, I had a great time here. That wraps up another episode of Never Fade, the NFT podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us at Never Fade NFT on Twitter. AZB, take us out, man. Let's go.